Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our last webinar of the year. Today from Cloudsmith, we'll be talking about 2025 software supply chain predictions, what you need to know. I'm Glenn Weinstein. I am the CEO here at Cloudsmith. And I'm joined by Ronan O'Dooley. Are you out there, Ronan? Oh, looks like maybe some technical difficulties with Ronan. All right, I'll get going. Hopefully we can get Ronan on board here shortly. And the agenda today is to take you through some of the observations that we've had here at Cloudsmith throughout the course of a very exciting 2024, and to convert those into what we believe they tell us about what we'll see in the software supply chain market, and specifically around managing and securing the software supply chain in 2025. We just check back with Ronan, see if you're back online, Ronan.
Glenn, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Hey, I can. Hey, Ronan. I was just trying to introduce you.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Ronan O'Dooley, VP of Engineering here at Cloudsmith.
All right. Ronan and I have been a tag team all year in trying to help our customers through these challenges of managing their binary artifacts and controlling and securing their software supply chain. And we have some opinions, I would say, and we're really excited to share those opinions with you here today. And they're going to take the form of what we believe we will be seeing in 2025. And Ronan, you and I agreed to try to form these predictions in such a way that we can come back to them in a year and see if they came true or not.
I look forward to that next year.
Yeah. Try to hold ourselves accountable to that. I actually pulled up the 2023 Cloudsmith, we called them at the time DevOps predictions. And let's just say we were a little off. So I did not put a slide together to check ourselves on the 2023 predictions. But I want to kind of categorize the three areas that we'll be covering today in three broad themes. And they all fall under the same meta theme, which is that the software supply chain fundamentally is under attack. We've known this for years. The attacks are getting more numerous, and they're getting more severe and more serious, and they're getting harder to counter. The bad guys are smart, and they're evading some standard controls that we've come to rely on as an industry, and we've had to meet measure with countermeasure. So we'll be talking through that across three broad areas. The first is how we believe enterprises will be setting priorities, how they set them now and how they'll be increasingly affected by this dynamic in 2025. So what are the most pressing priorities that enterprises are trying to bring to bear to gain control over their software supply chain? Secondly, Ronan and I have some thoughts on trends, what's new and interesting in the software supply chain world. We've both chosen an area of software development, of DevOps, of platform engineering that's very rapidly evolving. There's a lot of competitors in this space. There's a lot of different angles to how to solve this. We'll cover a little bit of that. And then finally, we'll be just looking at the threat vector and what should we be worried about in terms of countering threats, and what kind of steps do we think that enterprises will be taking in 2025 to counter those threats. So those are the three broad themes. And Ronan, let's just jump right into it. Ronan, you, as you mentioned, you are our VP of Engineering, so you're not just a evangelist for this, you're a practitioner. If you're speaking to other VPs of engineering, or perhaps to chief technology officers or to CISOs, they're busy people, they're busy departments. Building software is hard. Can we help them prioritize a little bit to balance risks versus costs when it comes to securing the software supply chain? And I want to kind of ease you into it with question number one, which is, what are we seeing and hearing today from regulatory bodies? This isn't just a initiative that is being launched internally, right? We are hearing more and more external pressure from regulatory bodies to get control of the software supply chain. What are we hearing?
That's right, Glenn. Yeah, those regulatory bodies around the world, they help set and raise the standards, and they're placing increased emphasis on securing the software supply chain. They recognize the software supply chain plays a critical role in national security, in economic stability, and global economic stability. In the US, for example, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, they're encouraging all companies to maintain SBOMs of all of the dependencies and related information in their in their software. And all vendors who work with government agencies will need to use SBOMs, and they need to cache the dependencies rather than pulling them from public repos, so that they can reduce risk of those dependencies being intercepted by malicious actors. In Europe, the Cyber Resilience Act is mandating that software vendors implement secure development practices. Zero trust architectures are becoming increasingly expected. All good practices, and those bodies are setting the right kind of standards ultimately to help companies avoid being the victim of software supply chain attack, and avoid the serious and increasing penalties that go along with non-compliance.
All right, so it sounds like it's fair to say we predict that regulatory bodies will have more to say in the future, and it's not just European regulatory bodies. We're seeing this globally. And your first citation was CISA, which is a U.S. Government agency, right?
Yeah, and we should listen to them.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a great point. We should listen to them, because if there's one prediction that will come true, it's that things that come out of bodies like CISA and the FBI and the CIA and other kind of government standards tend to work themselves into compliance regimes that eventually enterprises will be subjected to. Okay, moving on. Question number 2 around prioritization. This is something that we have definitely seen as a trend at Cloudsmith throughout the year, which is it's hard to secure something that you may not actually really even have control over. So if you don't, how do you secure a software supply chain if you're really still struggling to control it?
The short version is you don't really, or you're playing it's an ever increasing challenge, and it's one that's very difficult, not impossible to succeed until you have control. You need the visibility of what's gone into your software stack. We all know companies have had to move. We all have to move fast to stay ahead. Cloudsmith's no different, and that means adding new technologies best suited for whatever the task at hand is. It means using third-party and open source software to accelerate development. It means giving more autonomy to our teams to move quickly, and all of those things are to be welcomed. However, without the standards and controls, enterprises can really find themselves very quickly with a bunch of different standards, a lack of visibility over who's using what, and platforms that struggle to keep up with the diversity and complexity and volume of all those software, all that software which goes into their products and systems. So the first thing companies need is to use an artifact management platform like Cloudsmith. Gives them that visibility control, which can scale to meet their needs, that growing complexity, and also provides a low friction developer experience. It should happen in a highly performant way behind the scenes, but in such a way that can give that control and ultimately allow organizations to secure their software supply chain.
All right. So you're describing a kind of a momentum towards centralizing maybe controls into an artifact management platform. I'm always kind of careful to bear in mind the selection bias at Cloudsmith. We naturally see customers that have already made a decision to centralize and kind of standardize their artifact management platform. But I think it is fair to say that there is there's something bigger going on. We're seeing a movement and a motion towards recognition. Like if you don't have an artifact management platform, it's going to be really, really hard to secure your software supply chain moving forward. Okay, so more centralization, I suppose. And then the third question, if you are sitting in the CTO seat or the CISO seat or the VP engineering seat, you're making decisions about tooling, processes, you're making spending and prioritization decisions. What are they really going to do next year? Like I said, Ronan, you're our VP of engineering. What do you think your peers are really going to be prioritizing next year?
Well, ask yourself if you have that full visibility and control, first of all. As you've moved faster, do you still maintain a level of control of what is going into your software? Mm-hmm. If not, look to see how you can solve that. We mentioned some of the standards and what the regulatory bodies are saying. Find a solution that caches those dependencies rather than pulling them from public sources. Reduce that risk. Implement zero trust architecture, and make sure that you have a solution that that your developers accept and like, and more importantly, scales to meet their needs and your needs as a business.
You've said that a few times. I'm starting to get the impression that developers may not be amenable to hearing that their company is going to be implementing an artifact management solution. What do we? Is there? Should we forecast resistance in 2025?
It's a little bit of a double-edged. Like, developers do not enjoy spending time chasing down and resolving security issues in open source software and trying to chase that and do it when they haven't a clue how many libraries they have already in their software today. So these are solutions that they do appreciate, but they don't want them to get in their way. They don't want them to cause their builds to fail. They don't want them to cause their builds to slow down. Those are things that are really intensely frustrating to us as engineers. So find a solution that doesn't get in the way, but provides the significant value that engineers do appreciate.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on from prioritization and start to talk about other trends that we're seeing around the software supply chain space. Trends that are accelerating. The first that I want to talk about, we at Cosmith went out for another investment round this year, and boy, every venture capital firm in the world wants to know what's our perspective on AI. What is our perspective on AI, at least when it comes to software developers? What impact is AI having on developers that has implications for the software supply chain?
Yeah, listen, it's an incredibly exciting time to be a software engineer, embracing AI. Tools like Amazon Q and GitHub's Copilot help accelerate development and also enable us to identify how we can go faster using open source libraries, for example. But we need to be able to trust them. We need to be able to trust what those tools tell us. This is, and it's moving at a fantastic rate. Expect that to continue next year.
Okay, so developers are going to build more. They're going to be using maybe even a wider variety of formats and technologies because they'll be getting more suggestions along those lines. Presumably, almost like getting a senior developer sitting next to you. Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong, Ronan. We don't think that AI is in 100% a force for good when it comes to the software supply chain. Are we worried about increasing risks in 2025 from AI rearing its ugly head on the
Yes, AI for all, right? Including nefarious actors. They're using AI capabilities to gain a speed advantage, to use generative AI, for example, as part of their efforts. And they're often the first to take advantage of changes and improvements in technology. So it's not all about the good guys.
Yeah, not all about the good guys. How bad are the bad guys? Are we actually seeing signs of literal nation state activity in terms of taking advantage of AI to be malicious actor?
Yes, we are. And we have seen over the past decade or so, cyber criminals like the Lazarus Group were believed to be linked with the North Korean government become more complex and more sophisticated in their approaches. Expect that to continue for sure.
Wow. Okay. Pretty intimidating, and particularly when you consider the industries that some of our customers are in. They're not developers in university or something like that. They're developing and deploying production applications that nation states actually would be very much interested in intercepting and harming. So this is a very real threat, and only going to get worse, it sounds like. So can you end this on some good news, Ronan? Are there any positive things that we should look for from AI besides helping developers write more code faster?
Yes, listen, there's a lot more good guys than there are bad guys. So companies like Cosmith and our competitors and others are building and using AI technology to support the ecosystem, first of all, and to help keep that safe and secure, and also to help mitigate threats presented by others.
Okay, well, that sounds very encouraging. If we can expect to, we've seen AI make a massive difference in other product categories, particularly like developer productivity tools and so forth. And I suppose we can expect to see more of that in artifact management platforms and software supply chain platforms. Okay, so we've covered priorities, we've covered some trends in the software supply chain. Now let's come down to what we think enterprises will actually do to counter the software supply chain attacks that they're now seeing more of because they've gotten better visibility through artifact management. And let's start with this notion that you've touched on already once before, Ronan, of you can't secure what you don't control. What does that actually mean for an enterprise that is, let's say, bringing all of their development teams under the roof of a single artifact management platform?
Well, you can start to secure by doing it more locally. And let's say you have 200 teams, you've got 20 teams. Where each of those teams using different technology stack, different tooling. You can apply security at that kind of local level, but it's complex. And when something goes wrong, it becomes even a bigger problem to solve. And we all know when something goes wrong, speed is of the essence. So having full visibility across the entire stack of multiple technologies that are in use within your organization are essential to secure them. So getting that full visibility is step number one.
Okay, so that's a good cliffhanger. If that's step number one, what's step number two? Once you start to see all of the areas that need securing, so I think we're all familiar with software security tools that just have a not great signal to noise ratio. You're just dealing with a lot of signals. What do we think is going to happen with regard to managing the noise levels?
Okay, so once you have the visibility, then you can start to apply policies which meet your standards. Those policies, for some it might be ensuring no packages above a certain vulnerability score can be used, or software libraries that are out of support or below a certain version, or we could be here for another 10 minutes looking at all the different scenarios, and then applying actions to those. So some package may be quarantined, others might send a warning to the team, or place a limited use use rule on those, so that you can start to control. You might not necessarily prevent those packages from being used, but they can be used for a period of time while, for example, an exception might be sought from an InfoSec team, for example. And that policy-driven approach, you have all the visibility of everything, so you're doing it in one place. You're doing it in a way that's highly performant and highly flexible as well. And that policy-driven approach gives organization really both the flexibility and the power they need to secure their supply chain.
Okay, so if I could reframe that in the form of a prediction, enterprises will move from just becoming aware of security threats to actually having automated and systematic approaches to, or policy-driven approaches to dealing with those security threats.
Yes, and from individual point solutions that look at different use cases to a more centralized approach that gives them
like a centralized control plane for that reaction. Okay, and Ronan, you've warned me a few times in this presentation that if we get in the developer's way, they're not going to appreciate it. If anything, they'll probably root around it. There's a traditional tension between CISOs and developer teams. So how are we going to, do we think we can avoid adding friction to the developer experience?
We can. We're a very creative bunch. But I would say, performance, scalability, ease of use, great documentation, great customer service. Remember, all of these things are critical. Simplicity as well. Using one solution instead of lots of point solutions, so there's a lower cognitive overhead. Underestimate the importance of those and calling those out, and essentially using those to reduce the friction, make it easier for developers, and give them the assurance that they're doing things that are in line with the company objectives, but also in a way that allow them to get on with their main task at hand too.
Okay, good prediction. All right, so Ronan, I was typing away some notes while you were talking and trying to synthesize all of your thoughts on what's coming in this market into a set of predictions that we can check in a year and see if they came true. So here is my results of what Cloudsmith says will happen in 2025. First, we'll see software dev technology leaders like CISOs and CTOs prioritizing the kinds of steps that you've told us are now being recommended by CISA and by compliance standards like SALSA, like proxy and cache public registries. Don't download directly from them. You talked a lot about AI being used by malicious actors, including even nation states, to execute more targeted software supply chain attacks. So if you're in an industry that is subject to attacks, you are in the bullseye of the software supply chain threat vector. You mentioned customers, I suppose enterprises centralizing, prioritizing scalability and the developer experience when selecting their artifact management platform. And you started to touch on a wide variety of attack vectors, then vendors are going to have to adapt new defenses to keep up with the threat space around software supply chain attacks. Did I miss anything?
I would just add to that, maybe vendors are solving some of the complex problems of the support for different package formats, the ability to create those policies, but also the scalability and operational costs that come involved. There's been huge advances in those areas. Choose a vendor that's right for you, and I think we will see a lot more enterprises consolidate on a smaller number of tools in this area to simplify the solutions and make them more effective for them.
Right on. Okay, well, Ronan, I think that's going to do it for us today. As I mentioned at the top of the call, this is our last webinar of the year from Cloudsmith, appropriate to end on a set of reflections of 2024, what we saw happening, and how we think that leads to predictions around trends in 2025. I really appreciate you joining me, Ronan. You and I are both going to get out of here. We've got a couple more days of work, and then we're off for the holidays. I'd like to wish all of our listeners a happy 2024 holiday season. We'll be back in January of 2025 with an exciting series of webinars covering all sorts of interesting topics around artifact management, open source software, and the software supply chain. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great day.